Nanollose Limited, ASX NC6 is listed on the Australian Stock Exchange. And joining me right now is Executive Chairman, Dr. Wayne Best. Hello, Wayne.
Hi, Tim. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you. And thank you very much for coming on. Now, please, before we get started, we've got a new technology product, environmentally friendly textiles, which we'll talk about in a second. But firstly, could you please introduce yourself and the company to the viewers?
Yeah, so my background is not really in textile or fashion. My background is organic chemistry. I've spent most of my career, I guess, in the drug discovery and pharmaceutical sector. So I'm relatively new to the fashion business. So Nanollose is a biomaterials company. We're developing technologies to make better fibres and fabric with minimal environmental impact. I founded the company with 4 other colleagues back in 2014, and we listed on the ASX late 2017 via an IPO, raising 5 million Australian dollars. And I guess at that point, we were looking at a range of applications for using fermented waste to replace wood pulp. And there's actually quite a few applications for that. But due to the size of the company, we've recently focused on making environmentally friendly textiles for the fashion industry. And we've chosen the fashion industry because obviously there's a huge demand. You know, every time you turn on the TV or read a newspaper article, everyone's talking about sustainability and fast fashion and the amount of burden it's placing on our environment. The other reason to tackle the fashion industry, I guess, is a fairly low barrier to entry. It's not like the pharmaceutical sector where there's a whole pile of expensive and long clinical trials. You can get in with a new fabric and fibre pretty quickly. And the third and important reason we've gone for the textile and fashion sector is because it's got a very high margin elasticity, which allows us to get into the market with a new product relatively easily. If you think about the fashion industry, you can buy a t-shirt for $5, or you can go and buy a really high branded t-shirt for like $500. And so there's not that many products you can do that. If you're selling paper or a product like that, it's very much a one price and very little opportunity to add margin. So that's the reasons we're focused on the fashion industry.
Now, you've got a product, and we were just discussing it before, tree-free, and you've called it Nullabor. What is that?
Absolutely. So Nullabor, obviously to any Australians out there, it's a very iconic desert that separates Western Australia from the rest of the country. But it's also a Latin phrase, or short for 2 Latin words, meaning no trees. Nulla arbor in Latin is no trees. And so we've taken the Aussie iconic landmark and we've given it a new lease of life and put it towards this technology. And we think it's a really nice trademark. And most of the people we've spoken to in the fashion industry really love it.
So what's the next step for the textile itself? Are you going into manufacture? Are you supplying the textile industry with this product?
Absolutely, that's the plan. So we've been working with a partner in India called Nanollose Cellulose since beginning of 2020. We started doing some R&D with them. A year later, we filed a joint patent with them to produce this Nullabor fibre from waste. Just recently, we've taken that to the next level. So we've just completed our first successful pilot scale production of this fibre. That's given us 250 kilos of fibre to play around with. So we've gone from the laboratory scale right up to the 1/4 of a tonne scale. And that's really been a significant thing for Nanollose, because not only does it provide proof of concept that the technology is scalable, but for the first time, we're going to have large amounts of fibre that we can actually hand out as samples to potential customers.
Now, I've got an interesting question about the fibre itself. Is this a technology that you might license to textile manufacturers around the world, or do you plan on keeping that IP and selling the fibre itself?
So we won't be licensing the technology to make it, I don't think. The current situation is we have a joint patent with Burla. There aren't that many companies in the world that actually make this fibre. It's a fairly high-end fibre. So our plan is to work with Burla as partners to produce this fibre at scale, and we will sell the fibre to textile industry, to fashion industry, in terms of licensing intellectual property, probably the most valuable piece of intellectual property we have at the moment is probably the name Nullabor, the trademark. It's already become fairly well known within the fashion circle. So the ability to license that, like you would license, like Teflon or Gore-Tex, when you buy an outdoor garment, often it's made of Gore-Tex fabric. And we can envisage a situation where people are selling a variety of garments co-branded with Nullabor. So it might be I won't use any brand names, but it will be a garment from a well-known manufacturer. They'll have their brand in there and the textile will be labelled with our trademark. And so we can license that trademark.
Now, excuse the pun, but can you give us a feel for the textile? Is it like merino wool? Is it fine merino? Or is it like what would be the best naturally occurring in terms of animal product that would come close to the fibre?
Yeah, that's a good question. But you raise a very important point because we've been talking to the fashion business now for quite some time, and they love the concept. But as you can imagine, the textile fashion industry is very tactile. They want to be able to feel it. Everybody wants to be able to feel it. And they talk about the hand feel. What does it feel like? So this fibre, it's a type of lyocell. Basically, it's a lyocell fibre that's made, instead of making it from trees by the wood pulping process, we make it via waste. So the hand feel and the use of this fibre will be very much like lyocell. Lyocell's been around for 20 years. It's a well-accepted fabric. It's used in a lot of things that are close to the skin because it has a very soft, warm feel to it. It absorbs moisture, a bit like cotton. But lyocell, most people would be wearing lyocell at some point. They might not realise it. It's very common in athleisure wear, underwear. As I say, it's got a lovely soft feel to it, often referred to as peach.
And so it's a breathing fabric basically as well.
Oh yeah, biodegradable, breathing. It's made of natural cellulose, like cotton is made of natural cellulose. So it's biodegradable. It breathes. It soaks up water. It's a great fabric and a great textile. Yeah,
that's terrific. So what's on the horizon for Nanollose? I mean, over the next 6 months to 12 months, what are the plans?
Well, I think there's two aspects of it. We're going to continue with the pilot work to scale that up. At the moment, we've got the first 250 kilos in the bag. We're not going to stop there. It's a process to take it through to commercialisation. And there'll be a number of more pilot spins we do where we increase the quantity and we increase the percentage of our microbial cellulose into that product. So there's the technical aspect of it, but there's also the BD side of it now. Now that we have samples, we'll be going out there with the brands that we've spoken to before and possibly some new brands, giving them an opportunity to feel the fibre in whatever textile format they want. We'll be converting the fibre into yarns and various types of knits and weaves. They'll be able to feel those, see how that fits into their current programs, and hopefully sign some deals with some of those brands to take the fibre when it gets to commercial scale.
Some of the larger brands would be great. I mean, imagine having a Salvatore Ferragamo Nullabor. I mean, that'd be a fun tie to wear.
Yeah.
So for investors watching, what would be the prime motivator for someone looking at this? I guess you're, environmentally responsible, so you tick a box there, definitely for a lot of investors. But do you see a value proposition for investors coming onto the company now?
Well, absolutely. I think the fact that we've just completed the pilot spin, I think that de-risks it to a large extent. I mean, there's always a massive risk going from a lab scale to a pilot scale. Things happen, it doesn't always work out the way you expect. The type of equipment you use at the lab scale is very, very different to pilot scale and commercial scale. So we've taken a lot of that risk out now. We've just proven that this technology is scalable. So from that point of view, it's been heavily de-risked. We're also now just going into the situation where we have samples to give to these potential clients that we've been talking to for quite some time. So there's the technical side of it has been de-risked. We're moving into sort of like large-scale pilots. We're going to have material available now to be able to give samples and also small collections as well. So hopefully before too long, we'll be able to see some samples of these things, in being walked down the fashion catwalks and so forth.
Yeah, it's, if you were to take a similar analogy, in the mining industry, you've got explorers and producers that predominantly divide that in the resources sector. And I can see, Nanollose, now being an explorer basically on the technology, is now an emerging producer in the textile market. So I think that's a very strong indicator of where you're going. For investors watching, Nanollose Limited, the Australian ticker code is NC6, ACTS November Charlie 6. And Dr. Wayne Best, thank you very much for joining us this afternoon.
Thanks very much, Tim.